The best way to begin this video essay is to come back to the moment we're introduced to Conquest, which is right after the conclusion of the most devastating event to take place in the show so far, the Invincible War. This was a 3-day event and story that was orchestrated by one of Mark's nemesis, Angstrom. Angstrom would bring in Marks from different universes where he was evil in order to destroy the main universe in exchange for more dimensions for them to conquer. After the plan somewhat succeeds and Angstrom sends all the other Marks to an isolated dimension, Mark finds Angstrom and defeats him as well.
I'm kind of spoiling this for myself, but it's whatever.
Although all threats are now gone one way or another, the damage across the planet remains, and Mark is left to suffer with not only the rebuilding process, but the guilt of being the one who took the lives of so many people across the globe, even if there were alternative versions of himself. Now Mark is certainly not guilty, but we know how Mark is. He's gonna feel responsible for these actions, although he really shouldn't. After something this monumental happening in a story,
if every time you see an ad, you just wanna, you need to download Pi. It's a free Chrome extension that blocks ads on all your favorite sites. It even blocks ads that you didn't even know were ads. Imagine being
usually it would serve as an excuse for things to cool down, maybe even a soft reset of some kind. But here, that was never an option. We knew that the Viltrumites had tasked Mark with conquering Earth far before the Invincible War had taken place, and now at the worst possible time, they've come to see his progress. Expecting resistance from Mark judging from his previous encounters with the Empire.
My son like 2K years old, my son swole. Like dude can't even hug you, he gonna pop your wig off.
The one to check in and take over the planet in case of Mark's negligence or failure was the undefeated warmonger Conquest. I go over this moment again to really reinforce just how unexpected this man's appearance was, because I really do think that plays a big role into establishing how horrifying or hype this could be for the average viewer. The way that Conquest simply floats in the sky above Mark instantly establishes some form of dominance, and him calling Mark a worm only backs this up. From the moment Conquest is introduced, we know from the jump that this is much worse than any kind of enemy Mark has faced, including the alternate versions of himself. Not only this, but we've seen Mark fight Viltrumites before and it's never ended well. It doesn't take a genius for us to know that Conquest is also older than most Viltrumites, only increasing his threat level. This does not seem to be a fight that Mark can win. For me, it's pretty reminiscent of running into a secret boss for the first time in a video game. If I had to be specific, the moon presence. If you know, you know. The fight just begins at a moment you really think it shouldn't, and Mark himself even points out that there couldn't be a worse time for this man to appear. Despite this, he's more than welcome to the challenge, and the two charge at one another. Now, there is a little bit of an equal back and forth to let us think that Mark was ready for the big boys, but Conquest shows us why he holds such a name and begins to stomp out Mark for 2 issues straight. Even with the help of Oliver and Eve, there is no chance for him to win. Conquest is simply too powerful and bloodthirsty, even for the likes of Mark after everything he's been through. When they're cornered and Conquest believes that he's managed to get rid of Eve for good, Mark decides to drop one of the hardest quotes in media. "I don't care how strong you are. I don't care how fast you are. I can see the future. You don't live to see tomorrow." Although this is my favorite quote from the fight, there are so many more that just go so crazy that you can't help but remember them all. It's pretty easy to have this fight stuck in your head because of all the badass quotes that Mark and Conquest drop in their fight to the death. And these quotes are only reinforced with the amount of effort you see both of these combatants putting out in this fight, especially Mark. You see that every punch he throws past a certain point is probably hurting himself more than it hurts Conquest, but he persists. Even when he can't open his eyes as his entire body's restrained, he persists. Even when he can no longer use his body to fight, he still persists. Through this, we manage to see the difference between Mark and Conquest. No, Mark and all Viltrumites as of now. We see the humanity that drives Mark forward. No matter what's in his way, he'll always fight. Not because he loves doing so or was made to do it like everybody else, but it's because he has people that he must love and protect. There's a certain desperation behind all of Mark's actions because he understands here that if he loses, everybody loses. Mark cares for others more than he cares for himself, and that drives him relentlessly. This is why I've always seen the battle against Conquest as sort of an ending to Mark's initial character arcs. It culminates all of his struggles and growth to that point and uses Conquest to challenge said growth. Had Mark been any weaker here, cared any less about the people around him, or had any less willpower, it would have been over for everybody. And I think this is another reason why Conquest is beloved. Because he doesn't only give us a spectacle of a battle while being a very interesting character, but he puts our protagonist that we've come to know and love to the greatest test he's had up until that point. And when he passes, we're forced to take in the fact that Mark really has grown. Conquest manages to do it all in his first appearance as a secret boss kind of character who just pops up out of nowhere and gets—
What I don't understand is how many battles did Mark really win, and how he didn't beat none of the clones but was able to beat Conquest. Just don't be making no sense. Like, I feel like my son Mark Grayson low-key OD weak.
clapped by Mark. But thankfully, we soon find out that this isn't the end of his run just yet. When we see Conquest again, which is pretty soon after the conclusion of his first fight with Mark, we see that Cecil had retrieved him and tricked Mark into believing that Conquest was dead so he can question him about the Viltrumite Empire in a secret government base. Although Conquest was left to be just no more than a head at this point, he's a Viltrumite, and we're shown that this guy is able to regenerate from such a state and break out all in the span of a single page as something else is going on in the story. I think this does an amazing job at reminding us how scary Conquest is, because once you see this moment go down, you don't care about what's going on in the current arc. Conquest breaking out, taking that one glance at Earth, and flying away is a moment that plays your mind until you see him again. We know what he alone is capable of.
Hold on.
He's going to return with reinforcements that just spells the doom of Earth. We had already seen what the Invincible War was able to do. Now we're going to have an army of way more powerful Viltrumites come back, and nobody but Cecil's aware of this. It's a genius way to keep Conquest in the reader's mind at all times despite him never being present, because we know he'll be back at some point. It's just a matter of when. Thankfully in the comics at least, it didn't take too long. The comics just throw us into the Viltrumite War at some insane pacing, and we see that all of our heroes were heading toward Viltrum on a spaceship, and not even 2 pages into this journey, something crashes through the ship, completely destroying it. As Mark panics and jumps out to find his father, he's greeted by none other than our favorite Viltrumite, Conquest, to which Mark can only say, no, not him, taking the words out of our mouth. Although Mark had already defeated this guy, he knows how difficult of a task this originally was. It is his greatest hurdle, and not even 10 issues later, he has to face it again. And trust me, it was even more difficult than last time. Mark and Conquest begin their rematch in space, with Conquest expressing his excitement to have a rematch with the man who managed to put him down, leading into an equal back and forth unlike last time. But when Oliver begins to suffocate as he's not used to space, Conquest chooses to chase him down, which Mark responds by following him. Mark catches Conquest by the neck and chooses to try and choke him out, as an all-out fist fight just wasn't the answer here. While Conquest is attempting to release himself from Mark's grip by attacking him, this struggle eventually concludes with Conquest pulling out Mark's stomach, but Mark being successful in choking him out, putting him down for good. Of course, Mark passes out from the insane damage he's taken, and Oliver and Nolan take care of him on a planet while he recovers. This crazy battle that somehow even surpasses the first round in brutality concludes the story of our original Conquest and leaves an even better impression than before, while giving Mark another reason to get a power-up, and it also gives the story an opportunity to build up Nolan and Oliver's relationship, while progressing the world outside of them and preparing a new challenge. Now at this point our Conquest is gone, but we meet another in an alternate universe that doesn't do much at all, but he reminds us, or at least me, as to why I love this character. So when Mark comes to this alternate universe, he arrives at a Viltrum Empire, and now Conquest of this alternate universe pulls up to Mark and he's like, we don't know who you are, tell us who you are, and come with me, and if you resist, there will be consequences. So please resist. It's a pretty funny moment with a hint of PTSD in it, reminding you why Mark probably just chose to follow his orders and say nothing else. This leads to something pretty different and crazy in the Invincible storyline, but I just wanted to talk about this because it makes me laugh every time I see it. All in all, Conquest in his very short run in the Invincible comics manages to test Mark in every way possible, give the readers tons of badass impressionable quotes, and leave a long-lasting impression on the viewers many years after he left the story. Despite all his appearances serving to just move the story along, I think Conquest is a one-of-a-kind character, and it kind of makes me wish that Invincible was like Marvel or DC, so we can get more of him. But maybe there's some good in his short run, because we're forced to cherish what little we got from him. With that said, share your thoughts